Hey yo, what's up, what it do? It's your girl Shay, and welcome back to Opposites in a Nutshell. It's a goofy kind of day, guys. Thank you so much for coming back to Church Kids episode 2. Unfortunately, we have some technical difficulties that we're working out, so we're going to delay that episode 1 week. So that episode will actually be releasing next week. But in the meantime, this week, we're going to have a special episode because this is something that happened during the pandemic, and I feel like it was such a game changer and so many people are doing it, and that's the topic of online dating. And so Jasmine and I decided that we would have one of my friends join us to kind of share her experience of online dating because she actually had a successful go at it. That's where she met her boo thing, her husband of about 5 years, but we'll let her share her story. So yeah, without further ado, here's No Murderers, Please. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Opposites in a Nutshell. I'm Shay, and as you can see today, my co-host is not here, but that is totally fine. We miss her, and but we're still gonna have fun, but she'll be back for the next episode. In the meantime, I do have one of my really good friends here. Her name is Andrea, and I'm gonna have her introduce herself in just a second. But yeah, Andrea and I have been friends. I don't even know how long we've been friends now.
5 years?
Yeah, something like that, give or take. But yeah, before we get into that, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Andrea, and I'm hopefully gonna fill some big shoes today, and I'm excited to share with you guys, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I guess we can just kind of dive into it. We're going to be talking about the topic of online dating. So Andrea and I have actually had this conversation before. And she'll explain a little more of that, of like why she was kind of the person that I went to talk to about all this. But before we get into that, Andrea, you want to tell everybody what you do?
Okay, so I'm an interior designer, and I work for myself. I have my own business. I actually have 2 girls, 9 and 4, and married, husband of now 5 years, and that's about it, I guess.
Yeah. So Andrea, actually, when we first became friends, we met in a small group at church, which she was hosting. And after that, I mean, I don't even remember how we started hanging out, but we've just been hanging out ever since then. And one of the things when I first started my business, Andrea was kind of a person I would go to get advice on, okay, I'm a small business owner now. How do you deal with these types of things? How do you find your clients? And just whatever questions I had, she was super cool about, like sharing whatever knowledge she had about it. And even though we're in different industries, there were certain things that kind of like overlap. So I've always been so grateful for that. I know I've told you that before, but I also wanted to say it publicly since we have you here. Yeah. And so anyway, today we're going to be talking about the topic of online dating. And Andrea, you want to tell us a little bit about, I guess we're going to start with the end and work our way back. How did you meet your husband?
Sadly, I'm a professional online dater. My current husband, I did meet online on Match.com, and it was, I'm going to say, like a whole interview process to find him.
Yeah.
And we now are happily married, and my oldest is from my first marriage, and we did have a child together, so we have a 4-year-old together, and we live together, super happy, everything's great. But before to meet him, I felt like I probably went on 100 dates.
Oh gosh. See, that was one of the reasons why. So the funny thing is, when Jasmine and I were talking about, different topics we wanted to talk about, the way this one came up was we had been talking about some of the dating episodes we were going to do, because we were like, we don't want to have like 1,000,001 dating episodes. Like, if there's only so much you can talk about before you're just like, okay, enough, but one of the things we did talk about, was like, oh, like in the dating episode, I'll include this online date, blah, blah, blah. And as we kept going, we were like, I think this just needs to be its own episode. Yeah. And the more we talked about it, I feel like we've both had not the best experiences in it. And so I was like, we need to find someone that at least has some sort of positive something to say about it. And so that's when I thought of you. I was like, I know Andrea and her husband met each other online, because I remember when I was talking to you about that and you were sharing some of the crazy stories that you kind of like different dates that you experienced and stuff like that. But I want to hear, I guess before we get too much into all that, what were some of the apps that you used? Like, how did you decide which app you were going to use and stuff like that?
So I kind of did a little variety.
Okay.
Well, and so obviously I did Match, but I did eHarmony. At the time, I don't even know if that still even exists, but it was kind of, I think because I was like, oh, I'm in my upper 30s, and I felt like that was a little bit older because everyone was doing Tinder. So then I also did Tinder. Because that was the new 5 years ago, that was the new younger thing. So I did a little bit of both. I thought some of the ones that you paid for, like whether it was Match or I don't think whether it's eHarmony. This probably sounds like such an older. I'm 44, by the way. So, but any of those that you kind of have to pay a monthly subscription and all that, I thought was maybe a little bit more viable because you had to fill out the stuff, you paid for it and all that. But I found that's, especially now, not necessarily the case. And from what I hear from people that are online dating, that there's so many apps now.
Yeah.
Where before it was like almost legitimately a website that you logged on.
Yes, that is how it started out, and then all of a sudden apps kind of took over.
Yeah, and so when I was dating, it was strictly you logged into your computer. I went through the whole thing, and now it's pretty much just all app run. But so I know there's so many variations and splits off of those now, which seems to be more people are actually on those because it's easier and you don't have to pay. And if you just want to put your foot in the water, just kind of test it out, it's a good way to do it. And I did have success on both platforms, or all platforms, but it's, and I had really some interesting, we'll say, dates on all of them as well. And so I don't know that there's anything. I think it's just one of those, you kind of have to use your gut, know what you're looking for, and kind of be confident in those decisions. And I think so whichever way you go, that's really what's going to be kind of the driving force of your success.
Yeah. I want to hear, before we even go too much into it, I want to hear some of what would you say is the craziest date that you went on from like an online dating space? Let's do both. Start with the bad one.
Okay, bad one. Oh. I would say also just being, well, I had a guy that didn't know how to use sarcasm very well and would kind of make these jokes, and they were kind of getting lost on me completely. Oh, gosh. And, but it was also like, he'd ask me, oh, how are your parents? Are they, tell me about them. And I would tell him about them, and I would say, well, tell me about your parents. He goes, oh, well, they're both dead. And I'm like,
oh gosh,
I am so sorry. And he's like, gosh. Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
That's not, I don't, like, that was the whole date.
Oh, goodness.
And as you can imagine, so an hour of dinner of of like me and not understanding his humor, which to me is not very humorous.
Oh gosh.
But then at the end of it, almost like, oh, so you want to go back home with me? And I'm like,
that escalated.
Were we on the same date? Because I thought this was the biggest fail of a date. But so there's things like that you just have to be like, no, I am not going home.
That is funny.
I am leaving as soon as we get the check. Which wasn't a total fail. But and then I had some guys that were really interested in dating and pursuing relationships, and it was our second date actually. But we went on a really great first date. Everything went well. And then on our second date, he actually took me on a helicopter ride over Dallas.
Wow.
And yeah, he was like, well, you said you lived in Dallas your whole life, and I just want to show you a different perspective of it.
Wow.
And I know. It was one of the best dates I've ever had.
Oh my gosh.
And so you go, like, that's the kind of, I think, also the extreme with online dating. Like, it's a little bit of a gamut of, like, the really, like, bad dates, but some really incredible dates. And honestly, some of the guys that I wouldn't even say we're friends, because I don't think we date long, but like are friendly enough. If I saw them, some I did later, I'd be like, oh, hey, how are you? And so forth. And others, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I ran into you, I would run the other way on this.
You're like, duck, dodge, hide.
So It is, yeah, it's a range, for sure.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. Like, I know, you know, there's so many different, you know, I will say as far as like the dates I've been on, I've had nothing that is that amazing. That's why I was like, wait, what? Like, wow. Yeah, no, it's just been a lot of, I don't know, it's been a journey. Let's just put it that way. But I eventually got to a place where I was like, you know what? I think this isn't for me.
Yeah, and you do get that. You do get discouraged. And I remember when I got divorced from my first husband, and I was like, gosh, how do I date? And I have at the time, like a 1.5, 2-year old, and all of that. And I kind of was more selective, I guess, too, also dating with children, which I know I was probably more so than when I was dating. Because I did actually, to meet my first husband, I did do online dating as well at that time. And that was really, there were no apps. And there was no Tinder. I think it was like Match was one of the few at that time. And so with that, I still did a lot of dating, but I think later on the second time around, I'm like, I'm going to be a little more select, or try to have a really refined what I'm looking for, which I think helped, because before I was like, oh, just, anyone that I kind of bantered with, oh, let's go on a date. I was like, why I didn't ask them the certain questions before, and I felt like, you almost have to think of it as a little bit as a job interview, which just kind of shouldn't be. It's supposed to be, it should be so romantic, and we'll know when we see each other. Well, that doesn't, in this world, in this day and age, it doesn't sadly work like that. It's a little bit more, oh, well, he lives in Fort Worth, I live in Dallas, that's an hour. Do we feel like that's sometimes that can be a hindrance. And you're like, well, he never wants to leave Fort Worth, I never want to leave Dallas. Well, then why are we going to keep dating for 2 years when neither one of us ever want to leave? So you kind of have to sometimes put reality into the equation, which, is, I guess, less romantic these days.
Wow. So I guess let's talk a little more about your husband, because that's a positive note. So when you guys first started dating, so, you met each other on the app, you went out. First, tell us about your first date.
Okay.
What did you guys do?
It was not that exciting, actually. But it was good, because I think at that point, I might have been kind of like how you said before, not getting on burnout, but it's like, okay, he seems nice. We'll go on a date. I think we just met at like a local restaurant, sat at the bar, had some appetizers, drinks. But then the more we talked, we knew so much about each other, and we were in kind of similar industries, so there was an overlap of people we actually knew through work. Association. Like when we ended up not living far from each other, and we literally, it was funny because we shopped at the same grocery store. We ran on the same trail that like backed up between both of our like neighborhoods. So many things, like a work event that was like a big industry event. We were both there. Never met this person in my entire life. I probably could have ran by him twice on the trail.
How funny. So like you guys hadn't even like recognized each other.
And so it's just funny how online dating kind of brings that into reality, because we literally did live within 2 miles of each other. Similar industry, same, like I said, groceries, everything we did, we're like, we were at the same, same locations a lot, and our lives were just circling around each other, but we never met. And so it's funny, even some friends of mutual friends that we didn't even realize we had, they're like, oh my gosh, we would have never thought about setting you guys up. It's like, well, thanks, we could have skipped all this. But so it's just, I think that's the nice thing about it. Everyone's so busy. You're in your own circle, zones of life, and you're kind of do your own patterns, and it's hard to meet people, because it's like, well, no, I see my same, core people at church, or my same core people at work, and I have my same, so it's like now with everything, it's more, I don't know, you're just more inclusive, or I don't know what the right word, secluded, I guess, from people, because you just kind of do your own thing. And so online kind of branches you out in some different avenues that you maybe didn't know people existed, or that just were not in your little sheltered world. So.
Wow, that's awesome. And then, so I guess, okay, so now you guys have, gone on a date, and I'm assuming you're probably still online.
Yes. Okay. So I was still online dating after a date or two. But then we kind of quickly knew, and it was interesting, because I think I maybe knew the least about him when we first went on a date. Yeah. And I think he almost stood me up.
Oh, gosh.
Because he was late, and then he showed up in like
how late?
Probably like 15, 20 minutes. Okay. And he texted me some, I'm whatever excuse that wasn't that he was coming from something else. And he showed up kind of just like in a baseball cap and like shorts. And granted, we weren't going anywhere fancy. We were just kind of going to almost like a sports bar-ish place that was near both of us. And so it was just kind of an easy, like, hey, let's just get together. It wasn't a formal, like, let me take you to this nice restaurant. It was just like, because I think at that point we both were we're like, we put half the effort in. So we're like, oh, let's be at the casual place. We'll both come casual. Like, we'll just sit there. But maybe that's the best thing is that it was a little more comfortable. We talked and then, but he did kind of say that he was tired of us didn't come.
Oh, gosh.
So I laughed at like, hey, and it was funny because it was probably good because he is more shy. And so I think that casualness actually worked to his benefit where he was more talkative and all of that. And so, but yeah, I still dated online for a little bit. Then I kind of knew we were hanging out more and more and it just kind of organically just developed into that. And then we kind of like, okay, this is it.
Oh, wow. Wow. Did you guys ever have like a conversation where you were like, all right, this is happening. We're both deleting the app. Or getting off.
Yeah, a little bit. I think I might have mentioned to him like, oh, well, I guess this is kind of getting serious now. I'm going to delete this. Yeah. And he's like, oh, I already stopped doing that. Or whatever.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. Because I think we feel like it's such a big thing. Where guys sometimes are like, oh, but it could be vice versa. Just, sometimes. But I think it's always actually probably good to have that conversation because you never assume where someone else is still like dating. Like, oh, I didn't realize that we were doing this. Because I do think that it is can be a dangerous thing, an unhealthy thing because it's so accessible. And so that you could be just, oh, I'm just looking, stroll, know. And so the communication thing is good. It's important. But we didn't have a big, like, let's do it. It was just, again, kind of organically, which was, it was good because, usually I'm so overthinking things. And so for this kind of maybe just took me by surprise and kind of just happened more naturally. So I guess that is, I wouldn't say in a romantic way, that's probably maybe a good thing that it kind of just took over naturally how it should versus like checking all the boxes of like, what do we do next? How long has it been? Has it been 4 months? Has it been 5 months? When should we be serious? Like, because I think we all tend to do that of like, oh, it's been 5 dates. Now like whatever. And now it's been 2 weeks or it's been 3 months. So it's make or break time. And it's like, sometimes if we just let all that go, because I was one of those people, like I evaluated every step of the way where I didn't with this one. And it just kind of like naturally took its course.
Yeah. So, in terms of like safety, what was your process? So obviously like you're meeting people online, you don't know who these people are. Yeah. It could be a serial killer. It could be a normal person. You just never know.
I know, right?
Like what was kind of like your process with just the safety aspect?
Yeah, which I think is so important, because you hear all these horror stories, and I'm a big Dateline watcher.
Oh gosh, I can't do it. I'm like, look, there's enough craziness and sadness in the real world. I can't watch it.
So I do recommend never, obviously, ever on the first date, and I would probably even say I'd wait till maybe 3 or more dates to let them even know where you live, to pick you up, that kind of thing. So I think always meet in a public place. Yeah. Stay in public areas that you're not like, oh, we're going to walk me to the parking lot after the date. Well, because you're basically now in the same like scenario where you could get, assaulted in the parking lot, you know, or whatever, that no one's around. So I do think always being a public place, and try, obviously alcohol sometimes can be contributing. So make sure you're aware of what, how much you're drinking this. And then an Uber is probably a great way. Because again, then you're not walking to some parking lot trying to figure out parking on your own. Like someone's picking you up and there's record of someone picking you up and barely dropped you off, all of that. And I do recommend, my sister and I used to always do this. She was like, text me when you get there, let me know who you're meeting, give me his profile, that kind of thing, or phone number if you've been texting. So there was a record of where I was going, because especially at the time I was living by myself. So if I just went to the date and they're like, we don't know when the last time someone saw her, where she went, what she was doing. And so have a buddy, a friend, and sometimes it's good if it is someone who's dating as well. And then y'all can kind of share stories and have it, but or a family member, just always do that. And I think also the nice thing about some of the newer apps, which wasn't necessarily the case when I was dating, is like Tinder and some of them, they show you who you're friends with. I think is that the one, right? That does Facebook connections or something.
No, I think that's Facebook.
Oh, that's just Facebook dating.
Well, I think so. Don't quote me.
I'm out of the practice.
I tried it for like a hot minute. I wasn't there long enough to figure it all out, but I think it's something like if you have mutual friends. Yes, and those are the people that pop up, but not your actual Facebook friends. So if any of your Facebook friends are single and they're on the app, they're not going to pop up.
Okay, well that's
like
it. So
they're like mutual friends.
So I think the nice thing is if you do that kind of app where you see, oh hey, we know Jonathan. Well then, like, let's ask Jonathan let's ask about him. I mean, I know sometimes it's hard because it may be just a coworker that you barely know, but
it's still something.
It's still something, and just like, hey, casually, hey, I just. Because I think that's so common now. I've had that happen where a friend called me, oh my gosh, it says you know this person. I go, actually, I knew them, 15 years ago and they were just barely a friend. Or this, or I can say, oh, that's so-and-so's coworker. They're awesome, or I know about them. And I think that's, if you have that, you don't always get that option, but that's a great way if you just see those, ask about those connections. And that's, to me, a little even more reassuring than them just being a total stranger, which... you don't guys get to pick that, but that's the nice thing. And I think any of those apps that do any kind of tracking, especially, I think that's good. But to me, the biggest thing is meet in public, tell someone where you're going, who you're meeting with, all that kind of stuff. And then if they ever show up and they are not their picture, get out. Yeah, right. But I think everyone, for me, which I know has not been the case for a lot of people, that they've showed a picture when they're 20 and they're now 50. Yeah. Like,
there's a lot of that.
Especially, I hear with women, but I hear men do it too. Because it's like, oh, well, then they just say, oh, well, that was my profile picture from a long time ago or whatever. But if you don't live locally or whatever, like, I think full disclosure on anything, because it's hard enough to meet and get to know the real person. And if someone's not hiding from you or and I get certain things that people don't want to share right away because it is like, whether it's, a disability or this or just a mental thing, I think it's better because then it seems like you're hiding or you're not completely honest of like what else are you hiding. So I think whatever it is, because we all have our flaws or things we're unsure about or not proud of or this, but I think it's gonna come out whatever it is. If it's you're divorced, or some people, they would not necessarily disclose they had kids. Well, that's an important thing. Like, and that was the biggest thing, especially me dating with kids. I noticed some guys did not want to date someone with kids, which I get, but then why am I going to lie about it? Right. Because long term, it's not going to work. Right.
So, not only that, but I feel like after the first date, when you do disclose it, whatever, it's like you could have saved each other time.
Yes, because then it's like, why did I just go on 5 dates with someone, even though I want him to work because he's super nice and a great guy, but if he doesn't like one kid or not ready or that or whatever, it's just, it's hard. And I was even my own fault because I dated a guy probably for about 9 months before my husband, because he was so great in this, and he had 3 kids. I had a kid. And I was like, gosh, that's a lot. We put that together. It's a lot of kids. And then in my mind, I kind of still wanted a second kid. Well, he didn't, and then we kind of kept dating. And it's almost like I feel like we kind of mutually broke up, but he would say maybe kind of initiated like, hey, like, let's come to a realization here of, this is where we are, and let's kind of put out there what we really want. And had we done that in the beginning of, I really don't want any more kids, or, oh, I think I really do, or this, it's putting a lot of, because, like we, I don't say wasted 9 months, but we kind of wasted 9 months to just then start over again. It wasn't going anywhere. And so then I was starting over. And especially at my age, or at the time I thought, oh my age, but I'm in my late 30s. But it is, time is precious, and if you want to find those people or even establish family, it's best whatever it is. Like I said, whether it's affiliations to certain, like, if you're super Republican or super Democratic, or you're super religious or not religious, or this, and if that's important to you, that's okay. Share that and say, that's important for me and my partner to have that, because I think people are so like, I'm going to walk straight and narrow and not divulge anything. But it's like, well, but if you want that person to go with you to church every Sunday, well, that should be something. It doesn't have to be the first date. Then, but like second, as you go, just like, how do you feel about that? What is this important? So to me, it's all kind of got off subject, but just all those things. I feel like people just want to try to please the other person. Like in a job interview, you put your best foot forward, so you kind of hold back things, which first date, okay, but by second, third date, like, this is who you are, like, own it and be upfront, and because you're going to find someone that has those same things. And so
yeah, I'm so glad, honestly, that we asked you to come to this episode because, girl, if it was me talking about all the experiences, it's a hot mess out here.
Yeah.
And literally, there's been, I mean, you've heard some of the stories, but like, you know, there was one time I like matched with like a police officer or something. Apparently, there's the four, I'm not even going to get into it, but it's like a whole thing right now where there's like the four professions that you kind of steer clear of. Yes, it's a whole thing, but apparently police officers are in it. But the long story short of it, turns out like we'd been talking for a little while, and then right before we were about to meet, I don't know, the whole time I felt something was off. I couldn't, like, everything seemed fine, but something within me was just like, I don't know, like, you know, like gut instinct, the Holy Spirit, call it what you will, but like something was off. And I remember literally like the day before we were supposed to meet, I woke up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, like so random. And I was like, I don't know. And so at that point, obviously, if I'm feeling like that, that's not a good feeling to go into that situation with, you know? And so I decided to do a little snooping, you know?
Yeah.
And so did some Google searches and stuff. Come to find out the man was like a whole married man.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, with 2 kids. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know? And so you find a lot of like those types of situations, or, I mean, not to say that I haven't gone on any, like, there's been some decent guys out there where it's just a normal average date. Maybe we're not really on the same page, but at least it was a nice dinner, you know? Yeah. But yeah, it's just a lot of different crazy things.
Well, and I forgot about Google searching people, because I did do that. You know, and some people had more information or this. And the nice thing is, a lot of times if they disclose where they work, you can just even log onto that company's website. Yeah. Do they work there? Because if they're lying about that, that's kind of what I was getting at. Because I kind of feel bad with some of the things, but I think just, again, full disclosure, it's like once you see kind of catching them lying, it's like, wow, why would you lie about that? And
right.
Like, and then you
especially something so small like that.
Exactly.
Like, I'd rather you not tell me than like lie about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or just say I used to work there, or I'm here, or whatever. Or I'm figuring it out, you know, because then I know, okay, but and I had going back to yours, whether it was jobs or this, I had a set criteria too. Like if you're shirtless leaning against your car, like swipe or click, or don't, like, I would pass that by, or like, and I don't know, for a while it was like guys holding tigers. I don't know what the tiger thing was, but there was like little small tigers, and I was like,
oh, that's weird.
You're holding a tiger, you're out. Yeah, it was like,
you know what? Okay, hold on. Before we move, I think, okay, I recently learned that there's actually certain things that are like code for different things.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
so I've been missing. Well, maybe
probably because I found out, like, I don't remember what they stand for, but like, for example, if somebody like in their profile puts like a pineapple emoji, that means something. Whatever, I don't remember what it means, but whatever it was, I was like, yeah, because somebody explained it to me. But like, so it could have been like maybe holding a tiger was like code for something, and you're just kind of like, this is like a weird trend. Yeah. And they're like, now I'm trying to tell you something.
Well, good, because I swiped them.
Yeah, no, it was probably a good call.
Yeah, exactly. That's too funny.
Yeah, man, it's so interesting. But anyways, so I know, just out of curiosity, just because I know from the people that are listening, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are kind of in similar shoes as like myself, and obviously Jasmine is not here to speak for herself, but of the whole thing of like, we've tried this before, and it's there, you know, the whole saying of there's pee in the dating pool and all that stuff. Yeah. What are some, I guess, like tips for like outside of that world of like online dating, like ideas for where people can meet other people and stuff like that?
I would say ask your friends. I feel like somebody knows a coworker or this, and it could just be like, hey, don't you have to set me up where it's so awkward, but just be like, hey, why don't we all go get drinks after work together? All go get dinner, or go to a coffee, or invite them along. So I think that's a good one. And there are so many just social groups, like dinner groups and things, that you'd be surprised if you just look up in your area. There's, I mean, some of them are like singles meetup groups, but there's also just like dinner clubs, book clubs, those kind of thing. Obviously through your church groups, those kind of things. But I think it's just putting yourself out there, and maybe it's, you know what, I'm going to take a spin class. I've never taken a spin class, but I noticed at the gym there's like half guys to girls ratios.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll take, and then afterward, like, oh, or just kind of feel it out. But I think kind of willing to try new things, join different clubs.
Yeah.
Because I think now same thing like for work for me. So many people work from home now, but I work for myself. And even in my industry, it's a lot of women.
Yeah.
And so everyone's like, oh, don't you meet someone? I'm like, no, I meet no one. I meet 0 people that are eligible. And so, anyway, I think just, that's probably the thing, because I feel like even now, if you go in the single scene out with friends to dinner or to a bar or go dancing, it's a little more of a pickup in the moment. And it's hard to know, like, that's, I think, the nice benefit about online dating. You know someone's demographic, generally what their age is.
Yeah.
You know kind of generally what they're looking for. Do they have kids? Because I feel like everyone, when they're out there living in the moment, and you're not talking about stuff, you're like, yeah, let's dance, and that's great, and it's fun. But, like, I don't know. I'm sure a lot of those have turned into relationships in the past, because that's how we used to only meet people.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're kind of really, I don't know, a shot in the dark a little bit of, are they going to even be anybody compatible besides we thought we were both cute and we liked the song on, so we decided to dance, which, maybe that does work. But that's my thing, is a little bit, especially as most people now are dating a little bit older, like that was kind of to me when I was in my early 20s, because I didn't care. I wasn't necessarily looking for somebody long term. It was like, that's all we needed was a favorite song, and that was enough. We dated 3 weeks, and that's okay, because I'm busy and I'm on to the next thing or whatever. But now, like, as you're wanting to start settling down, I think some of the online platforms are better, because you get a more in-depth look at someone to know, like, am I gonna not waste my time? But if we go out several dates, that is an investment, because sometimes that's 1 date a week or 2 dates, and like next thing you know, a month's gone by, and you just, each month goes by and different, trying different things, and so then you're like years and years, and then it's, so I feel like it's a positive in that aspect. But
gotcha. Yeah.
But put yourself out there, try new things, and like I said, if you search, there's so many things in the area that, and then also volunteer. I found that there's a lot of things too that offer younger, like, volunteers that you might meet people. I mean, any avenue I feel like you do that's a little bit out of yours and that's interesting to you, you'll find it's interesting to other people that you have mutual likes. So,
no, that's good. I think that's solid advice. That's really good advice. Well, I don't want to keep you too long because I know you have to get to your kiddos' game. But anyways, I guess kind of going back to, like, talking about your husband. Well, I guess you kind of explained some of this of, going into it, you're just kind of almost at that point where you're like, all right, let's just see what happens type of thing. Did you ever, like, get nervous going into these situations?
Yes. There were some guys, especially if I saw, like, oh, they seem to have so much going for them. Yeah. And it was like, oh, wow, I don't want to mess this up, But I think it's also was kind of the part of the fun. Get the butterflies. Yeah. Have that nervousness versus like, oh, another day. One. Oh my gosh. Like making, putting on a little extra lip gloss because you're excited. And I think those butterflies, I actually enjoyed that. And like having that getting, it's like almost like kind of feeling of being alive a little bit of like having those emotions and excitement and things, because obviously nothing these days, a lot gets us too excited. We're like, having someone new in your life and all that should be exciting, and having a positive attitude and going in. I know one day, I'll never forget, it was a guy who was also recently divorced and still bitter about it. And I think like 5 minutes into the date, he's like, oh yeah, I'll never get married again. And I'm like, you're like, okay, but like we're on a date right now. Like, I don't know if I want to get into, and I think not carrying that negativity, or like if you're not ready to get back dating, then don't go dating or whatever. It's like, well, what are you doing? I'm not saying we needed to get married, but it's just like, I think coming in with those negative vibes is no good for anybody. So if you're not ready, don't force yourself to be ready. But if you are, keep a positive attitude, because I feel like there is just like the guy I went on the helicopter ride with, like, or so many of my dates, I feel like we had so much fun, and whether we went on a couple dates and it wasn't working out, it wasn't necessarily a waste of my time. I didn't find the next partner, but I enjoyed myself, and maybe I tried a cooking class or something I wasn't used to. So like, you just have to like kind of see the silver lining of like, oh, well, maybe I met someone knew I had a good time. I wasn't sitting at home,
Right.
like watching more Netflix or whatever. So it's like you have to kind of look at those positive things that even though it wasn't necessarily one step into a relationship, it was a good time. It was,
Yeah.
So there's so many positives if you stay positive about it to kind of continue on the journey and, and not get discouraged.
That's good. That's good. My final question about all of this. So how long was this process or this journey for you? Because I keep hearing, and I think you're one of the people that's told me this before too. I say one of because there's multiple people.
Yeah.
But the whole advice of like, oh, you just gotta keep at it, and then eventually after, because kind of like, as we're opening this, you said you probably went on 100 dates,
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I probably did.
Wow. Like literally?
Literally. And I was, at times I would be more motivated about it.
Yeah.
Because I would have some good dates. I'm like, oh, I think so, and then I kind of get discouraged or you just get busy with life. But I would also, sometimes too, if I thought someone was really interesting, but I wasn't sure, I was like, let's just go meet for coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Like, on a Saturday morning. We didn't have to be a formal date.
Right.
And sometimes it was like we would have such a good time coffee. Let's walk around the shopping center or whatever, or the park or whatever we were next to. And sometimes those, again, just turned into more than I thought they were, where I was like, oh, and then other times like, oh, thank God I only met him for coffee. He was like, we did not meet on any level what I thought. We had a lot of things that we were disagree.
Yeah.
And again, you can disagree with someone, but to a point where like these are big life things of like, I will never get married again, or I never want kids, or things you're like, okay, well, I have 2 children if you don't want any kids.
Yeah.
Like that, there's just certain things where you kind of say, okay, let's change, let's call it what it is. This is great. Nice to meet you and move on. So I would do things like that where I would everything have to be a formal date.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it was those, or just people are busy and you can on your lunch break get together.
Yeah.
And so I almost joke, my sister would laugh at me like if any week she was like, are you have a lunch date, a breakfast date, you have a dinner date? And I was like, well, I have a breakfast date this day and a dinner date that day, and I would just try to fit it in because it was like, well I'm sitting at home,
right?
Like, so to me it was like it was more exciting to go have coffee versus because especially COVID I feel like made us all a little bit lazy anyway, where it's like, but it's so much easier to sit in my pajamas and like whatever. Well, but it's probably just as easy to put some pants on and go outside and go get that coffee, And I think if you just change your thought, and be open, you'll be surprised. But I went on so many because I felt like it was something I definitely wanted in my life, and I was mostly enjoying it too. Because like I said, I did have so many people, and even if they weren't a match, they were very interesting. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I never thought of your or this perspective or that. And so kind of just like when you meet friends or anybody, you're like, wow, that was really interesting. Whether we're going on another date or not, I maybe learned something or just figured something out about myself. Like, oh, I do not want to date someone like that. So it's always good, I think.
That's funny because I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but there's a movie on Netflix that's pretty much about like a guy that tries online dating, and in their fine print they basically say, I think it's called Love Guaranteed, because the point was like, in their fine print they say that we guarantee you will find love on our site or our app or whatever it was. And so it was like, after 100 dates, if you don't find love, you get a refund. And so when you said no, literally, I was like, oh my gosh, you lived Love Guaranteed. And it was the same thing for him, where he would go like, sometimes it was breakfast, like, and some weekends he literally would have a breakfast, like a little coffee date in between, a lunch. And I was like, man.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're a player, but I don't think it really is, unless you're like leading all these people on and pursuing emotional or physical relationships. But if you're like, this is a first date, this is a first date, this is a first date, no, and they're all going on first dates too. I mean, like in the beginning. So I think it's just it's
a journey.
It's a journey. It is. So finding that person.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience. I guess before we go, do you have any parting words or any encouragement? I mean, you've already dropped a lot of wisdom throughout the episode,
I love that. No, I think just again staying positive. I think that's the best thing, because life is short, and so enjoy these moments. Enjoy that, like, get the butterflies, be excited, and try even when you're like still like my husband almost didn't come on our date.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of being lazy.
And now you're married.
And now we're married.
Yeah.
But he literally, even though he showed up in his baseball cap and his shorts, and he was 15, 20 minutes late, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not starting off well. Kind of same thing, I think, especially guys, they're like, oh, I'll just go on my next date or whatever. He showed up, and now we're married, and we have a 4-year-old, and he has a stepdaughter, and we like are about to head to a soccer game and all that. But I think if you just put yourself, but no, think of it positively. I get to go on these dates. I get to go to this restaurant. I get to, and I don't think it hurts. Suggest something that you've been wanting to try. Like, I've been wanting to try axe throwing. Like, throw that out there as a date, because then at least you've gone to do something you've wanted to, whether the date fails. Like, well, I got to try what I wanted to try. So, like, make it, if that helps you, encourages you, whatever, but just keep it positive, keep it, in that light, because I feel like you're less likely to get discouraged, but you're also then more appealing to somebody else. Anyway, so if someone comes in all depressed, like, oh, don't you hate online dating? Yeah. Oh, well, that's
a terrible opener.
Yeah, exactly. So that'd be my best advice.
No, that's solid advice. But like I said, I'm really glad we got to do this episode, because I know, especially after COVID, a lot more people are doing online dating than I would say ever. Now, I don't have any like actual facts and numbers and statistics to like back all this up, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. But like, there's just a lot more people that are trying it, because we went through this period of time where nobody was leaving the house, and so it's like, where do you meet? Yeah. And so anyway, so I'm glad we're able to talk about this and kind of look at it from a positive light. I'm sure we're probably going to have another episode where Jasmine and I just spill all the tea of all the terrible days we've been on. Maybe not. But anyways, yes, so grateful that you would join us. I don't know, if people wanted to find you, they're looking for an interior designer, how do they?
Oh, well, kind of don't. Give me till next year. Everyone, I think during COVID, has been renovating, so I feel like I've got a list long of backlog. But
that's awesome.
I know.
That is a good problem to have.
It's a good, but it's just Andrea Smith Designs. But yeah, no, it's been in a good way. Everyone, as you know, if anyone's trying to remodel or do anything, or even order a light fixture, it's like a year out. So everything has just been really delayed. But it's still, it's like I said, a good problem. But
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Andrea.
Oh, well,
it has been a pleasure.
I hope so.
No, it really has. All right.
Good luck out there.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to join us for the next episode next week, and we'll catch you then. Bye.
Bye.